Hi, and welcome back to the Still Rolling Jiu Jitsu podcast. Today, I'm sitting down with someone who took an unconventional and incredibly thoughtful path to becoming an instructor. Jeff Kingsley is the founder of Bandit Jiu Jitsu in Springfield, Ohio. He's a black belt who didn't just absorb one system, but built his teaching style from a lifetime of martial arts, self-study, structured instructor training, and a genuine obsession with helping people learn. We're going to talk about how early martial arts helped shape him, how he built his skills from sources outside of jiu-jitsu, and how he now builds students from the ground up. This is a conversation about teaching, learning, and the process of becoming the kind of coach who actually changes people. Welcome aboard, Jeff
Thanks,
Kingsley.
Matt.
How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah. So we've trained a little bit together when I was over at Team Chitwood, and you have been a guy that everybody looked forward to when Jeff was going to be there. When you were a brown belt, but also when you came up from Bandit, you come visit and stuff. People get excited when they know you're going to be on the mats. Can you take me through kind of your path in martial arts, where you started, and kind of how you came to get into jiu-jitsu and how you grew in the art?
Yeah. So, um, I think I've always been interested in that physical contact type martial arts kind of mindset from a young age. I know that back in the 80s, I was into Taekwondo, and I remember watching Karate Kid and thinking like, this is amazing. This guy he can defend himself, like, because he knows this karate stuff. Like, I got to learn something. And of course, the first thing you do is you go watch all the Bruce Lee films because you'll learn a lot from those, right? So Bruce Lee was amazing, and I remember watching like Bloodsport like late at night at somebody else's house because you couldn't watch that at my house growing up. They're very religious upbringing, and but then we'd go outside and we'd try stuff on each other, and this buddy of mine, I don't even remember his name because it was a military friend that was, when I was a young kid, he was a friend, and we'd go wrestle and kind of, beat each other up. And I was always smaller, so I probably got the brunt of the beating up, but it was fun. It was always fun for me to be physical. I grew up with a number of siblings, but I have a brother who's only 18 months younger than me. I'm about 5'10", 185, 190, and he's about 6'2", 205. So I was the older brother, but I wasn't always the biggest brother. So I always horse around with him and stuff. So that was always fun too. But I loved doing Taekwondo when I was young. I'm trying to think of how old I was when I did Taekwondo. And I still remember the guy's name. I don't know why, but his name was John Borelli. And John Borelli was a Taekwondo teacher. But I think that in John's mind, he also wanted to teach us other martial art concepts. So I remember learning wrist locks, the Hapkido wrist locks, and I remember learning a couple of judo throws. I remember learning a hip throw, and and those things stuck with me. I only did Taekwondo for a couple of years at most, but I loved sparring in Taekwondo. I loved putting the pads would get on, and I just get excited, like, oh, I get to kick
Yeah.
some people today, like it was just always really fun for me to think about it that way. And then, you know, as a military family, we moved and ended up. I wanted to take Taekwondo, but I had 5 siblings, and my parents were always running around doing stuff for everybody, and I just kind of got lost in the mix sometimes. I did play soccer though. I loved playing soccer, so I started playing soccer a lot. Um, when I was in high school, we were in Alabama, and I wanted to wrestle, and there wasn't a wrestling team. It was baseball, mostly football, um, and I think they even had a track team. But anyway, so I wanted to wrestle, so I went to the library and got a book, and this was, early 90s. The book was probably from 1954, and it was the most recent book they had on any kind of
Right.
grappling. And from that book, I learned how to do a blast double. Okay.
Okay.
And I actually learned to do a blast double and did it on some of my friends and was able to get a blast double on them. And um, from that one move, I learned this timing where you get them going up and you hit them in the legs. Change. Now the book didn't talk about all this, but just doing it enough, I just kind of figured out you change levels, you drop in, you do your, and I am sure I wasn't even doing it very well, but I learned how to
Yeah.
do it well enough that it worked a couple of times. So that made me really excited. Um, then I had some friends come down from Ohio, and I'm in Ohio now, obviously, but like they were wrestlers. And I did a blast double to the one guy because he was like, "Hey, let's wrestle." I was like, "Yeah, I know a move or two, you know."
Yeah.
I do a blast double. I end up getting pinned from a pancake, and it was very painful. Not what I was expecting, and I could not figure it out. This guy tried to explain it to me like 3 different times, and finally
Yeah.
was like, "Just forget it. Let's go fishing instead." Like whatever.
Right.
But I always remembered, like, man, there's so much to it that I didn't even scratch the surface. Right, just barely learned a little bit. But there wasn't a lot of, martial arts around that area. So I kind of got away from it. Again, I played soccer as my main thing. Um, for me, soccer was a big stress relief. I'd go play soccer and I'd wear my body out and I'd wear my mind out. I'll probably talk about this a little bit later, but to me, jujitsu is very much a physical meditation. You
Hmm.
hear, I think I've heard every one of the people that I heard talk about, when you're on the mats, you can't think about anything else. Otherwise you get choked. And for me, soccer was a lot like that. I got pretty good at soccer. I'd never had a formal coach. We didn't have a soccer team either in high school. So I basically played with some
What are
South
they doing
Americans
down
that
there
came
in
up to this
Alabama?
aviation school. Dude, not much. They play football, son. Let me tell you, they
Okay. All
play some
right.
football. Okay.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I'd play with locals, and I kind of taught myself to play soccer, and played when I joined the Navy when I was a little bit older. I say a little bit older, like 22, 23. And that's an old man in boot camp. You're 23.
Yeah.
You're like,
Yeah.
"Oh,
You're
what's
the
this
old
old guy?
mature one.
This
Yeah.
guy
Let's
can
make him a
drink
squad
legally."
leader. Yeah. Yeah.
So anyway, so I was in boot camp, and I was in the Navy, and I played soccer on the ship. The ship had a team, which I thought was pretty cool. And by the way, I heard you talk about being in Okinawa about the same time I was there, because I was in Sasebo,
Okay.
on LHD2, during 9/11, right? You were there at
Yeah.
that time,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
think is
Yeah.
interesting. So,
Yeah. I was on the
so we
rocks
used to
then.
pull into White Beach. Yeah, we used to pull into White Beach, pick up the Marines, go do exercises, come back, drop them off, and then go back to Sasebo.
Were you on the 31st MU?
No, but we carried them around.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I was on the ship, but we'd carry the 31st MU around to do their exercises.
Okay. I guess I had no idea that you guys didn't also call it the 31st MU.
No,
Okay.
no, we were the Essex, the USS Essex.
Okay.
So
And
anyway, so
for anybody listening, a MU, it's a Marine Expeditionary Unit. Basically, they go on a tour of the Western Pacific Rim. So they'll do, Japan, Korea, I think Singapore, Thailand, Guam, Australia. But anyway, so back to what you're talking about, Jeff.
Korea, yep, well, yeah, all that whole area, right? But anyway, so I played soccer when I was there. Did a lot of soccer as much as I could. When you're on ship, it's hard, but
Yeah.
we'd stop off at places and play games with locals, and it was fun. So anyway, I got out of the military, went to college, played soccer there with on Saturdays. We had big pickup games and played soccer with some pretty high level guys, actually. Still loved it. About my 4th year there, right when I graduated, I blew my knee out real bad, and took a season off and did a bunch of triathlons just to train, to do something physical. And when I came back, I didn't blow my knee out, but I was injured over and over again. When I came back to
Yeah.
play soccer after doing that, I blew my knee out real bad.
Okay.
At that point, I still wanted to play soccer, but when I did, I felt like my knee was separating. Anyway, long story short, got a surgery, and I couldn't run after that. I couldn't run. I had a lot of knee pain.
Yeah.
So I was like, I got to do something else. And I remember there was this show on Netflix, I think it was. There were these 2 guys that would go around to different countries, and they would do the whatever the martial art was of that country. They trained for
I
a
know the
week, and then
show.
they'd compete. You remember this one?
Yeah. Yeah, I do. Yeah. I've watched all of them. I
And
can't remember what it's called, but yeah.
yeah, and they would do pretty well usually, right?
Yeah.
But when they went to Brazil, they didn't fight the black belts at the end of the week. They fought a blue belt and a purple belt, and they
Yeah.
got trashed.
Yeah.
right? And I was like, wait a second, how come they're not fighting the black belts? And they were like, well, I mean, it wouldn't even be a competition. And I thought it was something that clicked when they did that. I was like, well, why is that? They can strike because they're good strikers, they could basically strike with these other martial arts. But when it came to the ground, it was like, it was over. And, like I said, I had done, I mean, I don't even want to say a little wrestling, but I had scrapped with some folks on the ground. So that didn't
Right.
ever bother me. But for me, I wanted to learn fundamentals of
Yeah.
something. And everything I looked at with jujitsu, and this was back in 2008, 2009 and era, you really couldn't find like, hey, this is important in this thing,
Yeah.
right? Like these are the things that you should know. These are building blocks of whatever the skill it is that you want to learn, right? And so that was frustrating. So I ended up finding Gracie University, and what they were saying was like, hey, if you're in a street fight, about 80% of what you would need to know is in this Gracie Combatives course, right? And I was like, that's it. That's it. I did their little free segment, and I was like, oh wow, this is amazing. That the level of detail is amazing. I could do this after watching this thing. I could do this technique. I'm sure it was
Mhm.
an Americana. I'm sure it was an Americana
Okay.
because that was like a free slice they had on forever, right? But
Yeah.
anyway, uh, after that, I bought the course. It wasn't too bad. It was like $120 or something. And I spent the next year, 9 months to a year, going through um, studiously going through each segment of each lesson, learning it and really trying to commit it to memory. And I built a training dummy that I still have at the gym. We call it Fred. And I would rep on this dummy. And at the time, I'd try and rep with my wife if she'd let me do anything. I'd try and
Yeah.
use her because you got to have a body, right? You got to have a body to do this
Yeah.
stuff. And so that's how I started my jujitsu journey, is getting
So I'm
into it
I'm
and wanting
curious
to
about that.
understand the fundamentals.
I'm curious about that because Gracie Combatives, the Gracie University, the online, the whole thing about training on your own and can it be effective? Obviously there's if you get on the internet, there's always a raging debate about it. I will also preface this and say, while I was at Chitwood, I actually subscribed to Gracie University and ran their combatives curriculum because I had fundamental holes in my game and I wanted to see what Gracie University was all about. From a curiosity standpoint. But once I got into their slices, and it improved my game. It really did. Now I had Phil Grimes coming over to my house. I have mats in the basement, um, and we would work these slices, and it was little things. It was being a high calorie heavyweight. You know, I've done an Americana 1,000 times, probably 10,000 times. Um, but I was never really given a whole lot of thought to sort of my south side, with that backside hook, if we're talking about Americana from Mount. Um, and there were some details in there that I'd never actually seen. And so from that standpoint, it improved my jujitsu. But I'm curious your experience because you really were working on a dummy and you didn't already have years of jujitsu that you were shoring up.
So I did work on a dummy when I was at home, but I would also go on Saturdays. I'd go to there was another place in Dayton, and I forget the guy's last name. His first name is John. I believe he's a black belt now, somewhere in Dayton. But I would go over there and we would train together. We'd go through something, or we'd go over a number of things that we had looked at that week, right? Just to kind of rep the techniques and work out the details. Like you said, every detail is important. And when we did those videos, dude, we shot each video. Like, I think you have to do like 4 or 5 videos. I forget right now, but like we shot those videos 50 freaking times, man. And then we would go over them with a fine tooth comb, like, oh, your hook is wrong there. Oh, you put your hand in the wrong place here. Oh, you didn't do that, blah, blah, blah. Like, and we would, I mean, meticulously tear those techniques apart based on what we knew from the lesson that was taught online.
Yeah.
And so after 9 months to a year of this, we had videos that we all got our blue belts. There was 3 of us. There was John, another guy that he was living with. I forget his name off the top of my head, but and me. We all got our videos submitted, and we all passed. I think I got a 94 on the test or something. There were a couple things that I was like, there's like 1 or 2 that I was like, okay, that makes sense. And there was one where he was like, I can't see your right arm here, but it should be there. I was like, wait, you're gonna ding me on that? So they were
Yeah.
really nitpicky on these tests. With fair enough, they should be, right? Because they're not there
Yeah.
seeing you, so they have to be nitpicky. Okay. So let's move forward. So taking all of that experience, right, that I learned all these things, and I at that time, right toward the end, it was probably before I had finished this, but toward the end, there was a grappling club on Right Pat where I work, and they were meeting at lunchtime. And so I was like, oh, I'll go meet with this grappling club and see what's up. And so I got in there and realized that technique wise, I understood some of the fine details of these far better than a lot of the guys that were training there in the grappling club. Execution wise, it was a
Right.
whole different story,
That's
right?
what I was
So
curious about, is
so
how it went
reading a
when you went live.
reading a book and learning a skill out of a book is different than executing that skill. And that was a big wake up call for me. And I could execute it like pretty fluently. Like I built it to it. I'd done these things hundreds of times, so hundreds of drills. But learning setups and learning timing and learning momentum and learning balance points and learning, like, a lot of that stuff was not, I mean, they don't cover that. They teach technique, 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 technique. That's just the way they do it. But yeah, so it took me probably another 6 months to a year to really feel like a blue belt. I was wearing a blue belt, but to really feel like one on the mats, and I feel like I
Yeah.
had the knowledge. I had a lot of knowledge, but to feel like I could execute those things and be comfortable rolling and engaging with another partner, it took me another 6 months to a year.
Now, before you started going to that grappling club, because you had other people that you were working on these combatives with, were you guys rolling live with each other much, or were you just drilling?
A little bit, mostly drilling. And we were really focused on like really like we talked about it then. It was like drinking the Kool-Aid, man. You got to learn these techniques. The only people that could teach you were if their last name wasn't Gracie, like we didn't believe them. Like, oh no, I don't know if that works or not. Like, and it was I'll probably talk about this more later too, but it felt very cultish at the time. Like I mean, like, the way the Gracies teach things it's very mature. Their teaching techniques are very solid. In fact, one of my next big experiences after training in the grappling club for a year, 2, 3 years, was getting to train with Eve and Henner Gracie. They weren't married at the time, so it was Eve Torres and Henner at the time, but I was able to get into a team of 100 people that were selected from Right Pat to go through this Gracie Defense System course. It was a week-long course where we went to the gym. I want to say it was at Wright State. I think they held it at Wright State. They held it at Wright State. For a week, we went and we learned every day. We learned not just the women's combative, the pink belt stuff that they
Hmm.
teach, women's defense, but also how to teach. And I still have the manual that they gave us. Like, these are the steps that you follow for each technique. You do this first, and they had a lot of really cool ways to remember the teaching structure. Like, all right, you start here, you give an example, then you show it once, then you explain what you're doing, then you explain how you're doing it, then you explain why you're doing it, right? So you go through the technique 3 times, and
Okay.
the shading. I remember that even to this day, to shade my techniques. I this is one of the things I struggle with, because I always want to tell you everything as I go through it the first time, and so I try to shade because of that experience that I had. I try to, like, give you the what, give you the how, and then give you the why last. And yeah, so I learned that from the Gracies directly from Henner, and really enjoyed that experience. Yeah.
Okay. Now,
And
and I'm not going to
so
turn this into a Gracie University infomercial, but they last year, I think it was last year, they updated their combatives series to high res video, and they've added some graphics that can give you some direction on kind of where. But anyway, yeah,
yeah, look, I have a lot of good things to say about Gracie University. For me, it was very good because I could do it whenever I wanted. I was up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning going through my combatives and taking notes and practicing on my dummy. And then, I do it until I got it down, and then I do the next thing. Now, the other thing that I really loved about this is after I started training, and I'm like, dude, I don't understand why I get a triangle and I can't finish it. I went back and watched the triangle video 3 times and was like, my hips are not in the right place.
yeah,
And so I went and did it on the mat, and all of a sudden my triangle started working. So there's a lot of pros to the Gracie University. Um,
yeah,
it's a great resource for learning, especially fine detail if you're into that. Lots of people learn different ways. At the time, I was so invested that those fine details, I really like and appreciated those fine details for each technique. I think I've shifted my mentality now that I don't like that as much now, but um but that's because I don't know, it's I've just changed my mindset on some of that stuff. But I do like Race University. It's still I mean, once you get them, you always own them. I still have it on speed dial. If I need to look something up, I will. But it's yeah, great resource.
yeah. I agree. Like I said, I subscribed, and it helped me kind of shore up some of my fundamentals. As you know, a lot of gyms don't have a fundamentals specific curriculum or class, and so if you happen to miss the triangle class, you may not see it for a long time, and it's nice to have a resource that is solid instruction, because obviously there's 1,000 YouTubes on everything now, but no, they're solid. I agree. So grappling club, then what?
So yeah, grappling club. Then what? Because I had all this information in my head, I ended up teaching a lot, like teaching a lot. People come and go in grappling club just like anywhere else. In fact, probably more because you don't pay for anything, right? It's just show up and
Yeah,
train. And most of my training started on a boxing ring. There wasn't a mat; it was just like a canvas cover with blood stains and sweat stains and all kinds of crap. Never got any kind of ringworm or MRSA, nothing like that on that
yeah.
boxing mat. Not till we got mats. When I got mats, I started having some issues.
Okay,
But it's funny to me. Anyway, one of my I have two really main training partners. One was Caroline King, small female, um, phenomenal training partner, scrappy as can be. She's a black belt now. Um, and when we were training, at one point I realized that if I wanted to armbar her, I could just pull her arm out and armbar her. But what was I learning from that? What was she learning from that? Like nothing. And so I shifted my mentality. So when I rolled with her, um, I played the game. I don't want to force her arm out, but I want to get her to move her arm into a place where I can attack it.
okay,
And this was a big shift for me. It because that was my mentality, and because we trained together so often, it really helped me develop that mindset when I train, period. Like I'll use strength if I have to. And I really didn't start doing that till I was a purple belt, and I was a blue belt for 7 years. Okay. But like it helped me develop a mental game. Like when I roll, I'm playing jujitsu. I love to play jujitsu. The day I realized that I'd never be able to stop was the day before my first court date for my divorce.
okay,
Right.
yeah,
I hadn't slept for like 2 days. I probably hadn't eaten much in the last 3 or 4 days. I don't know if I call her. I am her because I am her at work. But I was like, hey, I need some mat time real bad. And she
yeah.
was like, yeah, I got lunches open today. We rolled for an hour and a half straight, no breaks, just hour and a half of rolling. And I'll never forget standing up afterwards, taking a deep breath and recognizing that, man, all of that stress had melted away. Now, I
Yeah.
still felt fairly, yeah, I still had some stress, but like the anxiety level had gone from a 9 to like a 4, 3, 4, very manageable. And
Yeah.
I knew in that moment, I was like, I have to do this. I can't stop doing this. And I was sold. And she was one of my favorite training partner because I had developed this mentality with her where I was trying to trick her rather than trying to beat her.
Yeah.
So like when we're rolling together, it's fun because I end up laughing half the time when we both know what just happened. And she did the same to me, right? So she would trick me into doing something and then attack that. And I trick her into doing something and I attack that. And so it was just fun, a lot of fun. And so that's how that's how my style of rolling kind of developed with a smaller person. So I didn't develop a good deep half because it's real hard to do that to someone that's 5'2", and
Yeah,
if
for
you're
sure.
almost 6 foot. I didn't develop some parts of my game because of that, but other parts of my game were I think much stronger because of that, right? It depends on I'm very tight. I'm very tight with my body because it's a small person. She shrimps 3 inches, she'll get a knee inside, right? So you can't
Hmm.
let her do that. So I was very aware of that. So those are the kinds of things that help develop my game, um, and what I'm good at.
Yeah. That's there's something to be said for that. I've got a training partner. I think he's 5'5" or 5'6", and I'm 6'2", 6'3". So it drives me insane because he just barely moves and he's already got a knee back in. I cannot keep
Right.
these things out of here. Um, so eventually you started training. It, you were a blue belt for 7 years. Is that when you went and started training with Dave Reeves?
Yes, so Dave Fluffy Reeves, he has a fluffy bunny logo. I love it. It's amazing. Um, but yeah, so I trained with him for about a year and a half. And I heard you talk about this in it was Frangos was talking about, hey, if you're not being promoted, then just be the best that you can be at that level, and eventually they can't not promote you. And that's kind of what happened with Dave. Um, he gave me a stripe, and it made me feel weird because he didn't give me my blue belt, and I was like, oh, I don't know if this is Gracie Jiu Jitsu. I wrote to Henner, uh, I'm a Gracie Jiu Jitsu student, but I was striped up by a non-Gracie guy. like,
Yeah.
like,
Like, what do I do?
oh, what do I do? Oh no. So anyway, so I was like, all right, thanks, man. So he gave me a second stripe like a month later, and I said, listen, I said, Dave, I appreciate that you're giving me stripes. I said, but the black on my blue belt is literally falling off. I was like, I've been a blue belt for 7 years. I said,
Yeah.
if you want to promote me, it'd be great, but the stripes really don't it doesn't do much for me. And the next time he saw me, he promoted me to purple belt.
Okay.
So, I mean, yeah, I at the time, I was very, I felt like I was performing well beyond what a purple belt would perform.
Yeah.
But I hadn't really trained with a black belt that much, right? We had a black belt come in for a while. His name was Rodney Hargrove, great guy, lives in DC now. I still ping him every once in a while. Um, a- but I really hadn't trained with a lot of upper level guys except Dave. And so he promoted me, and I did not have that moment where a lot of guys are like, oh well, I don't feel like a purple belt. I was like, I felt like a purple belt like
Yeah.
2 years ago, so I'm okay. Um, but yeah, it was good. It was good to be promoted. And then not long after that happened, my schedule changed. I had to stop training with Dave. Um, I called up another black belt that had trained on the base. His name was Chris Easter. Chris is a solid guy. He was like I don't know if he was the command master sergeant, but he was
Okay.
something at that level. He was master sergeant
Yeah.
in the Air Force, and he was probably 5'9", 220, just muscle and super technical. Um, used to come in and just hammer on me for a while, and um, he would come in probably every 3 to 6 months. He'd come in and visit, and I'd see him, and it was awesome. And that happened for about 3 years. So I can't remember when I was promoted on stuff. I think it was like maybe 4 years. It was like 2021, like early 2021, 2020, like after the pandemic had started.
Okay.
And I was living with my wife in another place, like remotely, working. Um, he asked me to come back. He was like, "Hey, I'm retiring. Come back and visit me before I leave." And I was like, "I don't know if I really want to do that."
He's
And
like, not
like
really.
he had contacted my wife and was like, "Hey, get him to come. I want to promote him." And I didn't know this at the time.
Yeah.
So she's like, "No, you should go. You
You
should
should.
go, see your friends." I was like,
Yeah.
all right, whatever.
Yeah.
So I
Twist my
went and
arm.
he promoted me. Very, very surprising. I was
Yeah.
shocked. Very grateful. But I mean, Chris was awesome and a great mentor, but like I'd really been training on my own. Like Caroline and I and another guy named AJ had kind of built our own curriculum. And we would go through this curriculum and we would really focus on different things for weeks at least, and sometimes months at a time. We had directed our own training, and to me that was a really important part of our development as players, right? We um, there's breadth of knowledge and there's depth of knowledge. To me, the breadth of knowledge is being well rounded. You should know a lot of different things about grappling. You should know each position. You should know different things from each position. You should have like a broad understanding of how grappling works and the things that are important, right? But depth of knowledge is like, all right, perform this technique and
Right.
do it on somebody that knows it's coming. Do it on somebody that doesn't want you to do it to them, and still do it anyway. And in order
Yeah.
to do that, you need a much stronger understanding of how it works, how it's set up, how to set it up, how to make it work even though they don't want it to work or know it's coming, how to trick them into thinking maybe it's not coming and then make it come anyway. Like there's a lot to the depth of knowledge. And so that time that we spent really focusing on those different things was building depth of knowledge in a lot of different areas. And I credit a lot of my skill to those periods where we did that. And it really set the stage for me to set my own curriculum when I started a school, to make sure that everybody should have breadth of knowledge, but also I encourage them to have depth of knowledge. And I'll talk about that a little bit later, but um, that was really important to me. Another thing we did was we did a lot of no gi versus gi. We would do a week of gi, a week of no gi, a week of gi, a week of no gi. And I saw jumps in my ability to perform in one from the other,
Mm-hmm.
in one from the other. People talk about it like, oh, this is better than that, that's better than this. But I've specifically, I probably use a lot more no-gi grips. And I heard you say this too in one of your podcasts. I was trying to study up for this, right?
Sure.
So one of them was like, you use no-gi grips and just roll with clothes on. That's gi, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I do. I've got arthritic fingers, right? It hurts me to do cross collar chokes.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of no-gi grips. I teach my guys like you can grab the gi, but you don't have to grab the gi. You can grab the body hook. A lot of monkey paw hooks, right?
Mm-hmm.
I use a lot of that. A lot of gable grips where I grab my own hand, make strong connections with people. So anyway, I learned a lot of that stuff during that time period, and it was a lot of fun. And then the pandemic came. I was a brown belt. I don't remember how long I was off the mats, but I hated it. I was like, I got to find a place to train. I
Right.
was living in Sunbury at the time, and I ended up. I went to one place, and I just didn't get a good vibe. I'm not gonna say where it was, but I just didn't get a good vibe. So I was like, all right, it's not cool. Whatever. Went to Lewis Center, and it felt like I was walking into home. Like the guys were a little older, they were my age. Um, I won't forget the first time I came to a morning class and Chris Sansbury was there, and he was
Yeah.
a white belt with 4 stripes, with 3 stripes, and I was a new brown belt. It was the day after Chief got his brown belt. So Chief Belfer, I love
Yeah.
teaching with him, by the way.
Yeah.
Phenomenal
He's an
instructor.
awesome guy.
So I was there in the morning, and Chris Sansbury gave me all I could handle. And I thought, what is happening right now? This guy he's kicking my butt, but I didn't know that he was like a ranked CrossFitter in the country. Like
Yeah.
I was like, geez, no wonder it was like wrestling in oak tree, like it was rough. But
Yeah.
anyway, so that's when I started training with at Lewis Center. Most of my training was with Chief, and I helped out teaching in the mornings, which was very natural for me because I was used to teaching wherever I was. I'm usually teaching anyway, um, and I really just tried to help Chief because he does such a good job with his technical instruction is next level.
Yeah. You can
Um,
tell he's been teaching
I'm
people
more of a
things for a
concepts
long
guy.
time.
Yeah, yeah. I'm more of a concepts guy, but he's like, "All right, you put your hand here and you do this with it," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, that's great information."
Right.
But anyway, so um, I just kind of built my reputation at Chitwood. I love to come in on Saturdays. Every time I came in on a Saturday, I would treat it like I was doing private, mini privates with people. I'd try and help out as much as I could. I love seeing people learn. I love seeing people get better. I love I want to train people to be better than I am, right? I didn't start till I was in my 30s.
Yeah.
Like I and I love it. So I want to see people get better than me, and I really enjoyed my time at Chitwood because I felt like I was able to make an impact there on the culture, and I really enjoyed it. It felt like family. So
Well, I can tell you this. Couple of points. Number one, you are easily the most requested. Hey, you got to get Kingsley on your podcast. Um, I
okay.
I've had double digits of different people say get Kingsley on there. Like this, we've got to talk to him.
Well,
Um,
we'll see how many views you get before I.
I'm telling you, you were people were telling me I got to get Kingsley on there. But you had a reputation on
Oh,
Chitwood. I was not an AM guy, but people in the PM classes were like, "Hey, have you rolled with Jeff Kingsley? Have you met him yet?" And I was like, "No, I don't know who he is." And then I probably met you at Open Mat on a Saturday, and uh,
yeah, yeah,
you just handled me. I mean, it was one of those roles that you're like, okay, this guy's a brown belt, probably ready for a black belt, and you know, like it was an ass kicking in all the best kinds of ways. Um, and the other piece of that though is every time I've seen you or saw you at any of these open mats, you were always, not just kind of helping people, you were helping everybody. And you were teaching, and um, so you gained such a solid reputation in that gym, um, among, even guys that didn't know you other than this Kingsley dude's going to be at open mat and we want to learn some stuff from him because he's got these other things that he does. And um, so, you know, I appreciate what you put into, everybody else around you when you were on those mats at Chitwood. Um, but yeah, you had a reputation and it still persists. People are like, still like, hey, when's Kingsley coming up? Um, so,
thanks, man.
um,
I miss you guys. Like it's
yeah.
hard. Like I love having my crew. I'm in Springfield, Ohio now, at Bandit. But
Hmm.
like I really do miss being there. We have fun. I love our crew. And every once in a while, I tell them like, hey, you guys got to go out to Lewis Center, man, and like
Yeah.
it's like extended family. Like let's go visit Uncle, Matt or whatever.
Yeah.
Like and give them a hard time. And so we've tried to do that on occasion, but probably not as often as we should.
Well, it's hard.
But yeah, that
It's a road trip.
love it.
Um,
Yep.
you know, uh, and actually, it was kind of like it was bittersweet. When I found out you were going to be opening up a gym in a different city, and that meant you were going to be leaving, and I was like, damn, like, um, it was good training with him. But again, you have been coming up, and it's good seeing you. I left Chitwood earlier this year, and I switched, for mostly just the distance. But I do miss that Chitwood clan, and I still try to get to an open mat here and there, and and go see the guys, or we'll get together and meet up for dinner or something. Um, so you opened a gym, and I'm sure that's super easy. How did how has that been
It's
going?
stressful, man. It's stressful, like,
Yeah,
um, it's so hard these days to do anything, to try and I don't know, to try and do anything, but, like, the cost of a location is just it's really been a huge challenge for me. A big part of that is probably because I'm pretty risk averse. Like, I hate the idea of taking out a loan. And so I really have tried to do this without borrowing money. And for the most part, I haven't borrowed any money, but I also struggle with the location I'm in. It's not a bad. The mats are phenomenal. We've got a raised floor, tatami mats. They're decked out. It's a great space, but the location's not phenomenal. So I'm looking to try and get a better location. The other problem is, I have a full-time job, and teaching in the mornings and in the evenings is hard. So
yeah,
now you're working, 16, 18 hours a day. It's tough and physically demanding as well.
yeah,
So yeah. So
yeah.
anyway, so it's been tough to try and get the right location for the right price that that we can, you know that we can grow. So you know we're still doing okay. We've got enough. We're not losing money every month, so that's good. That's always a good
Well,
thing.
yeah.
And we've got a really good dedicated crew. The guys that are consistent have grown really quickly. Um, One of the most exciting things about having my own gym is I get to teach the way I want to teach.
Hmm.
And I think so. So I've done a lot of studying about how can you learn faster? How can you learn better? How can how can you teach people? How do you coach people to be better and as quickly as possible, right? Everybody's different. Some people it's going to take longer, some people are going to pick it up right away. But what can I do to facilitate it, enable people to improve their skill? So there have been a couple resources that I've looked to try and learn that. And um I feel like I've put together a pretty good curriculum. Um One of the things that made a big impact on me was the Talent Code. It's a book that talks about these hot spots of skill in the world. It talks about the development of soccer in Brazil, and how one of the big things that came to my mind was futsal. They play a lot of futsal, and their best players, they move the ball like they're playing futsal because they did play a lot of futsal. They talk about I think it's like tennis in Russia and women's golf in South Korea, and they just talk about some different hotspots of talent, and they talk about why it's developed to such a high level in those spots, right? And
Yeah,
like, okay, what makes the difference? Um, but the other thing it talks about is the fact that, like, growing up, you probably heard this too, muscle memory. What is muscle memory, right?
right.
It's reflexively moving something that is a familiar movement to you that you build. But really, it's not a muscular thing. It's actually a neurological thing. Neurologically, when you perform a physical movement, you have neurons that travel along a certain path. And the more you do that exact movement, you you build this what's called a myelin layer around that pathway. Now, if you do it 10, you drills, let's say you drill something, you drill an arm bar 100 times, you'll build a very small, thin myelin layer over this
Neural
movement
pathway.
path in your brain.
Yeah,
But as you increase the stress while you perform that movement, you will continue to thicken that myelin layer. Now, what
interesting.
they've shown is the thicker that myelin layer is, the faster the neurons can travel down it. So it becomes more conductive. Not only that, but the faster you can make a decision if there's a branch, you can make a
Right.
decision much faster to move down that myelin layer. So what I found was that's why a good example of this is like when you see a quarterback throwing in these drills where they're
Mm-hmm.
throwing, oh, you just like, boom, and he throws it into a tire 40 yards away. You're like, holy crap.
Right.
Well, he's doing the same thing in a football game, and it's much more stressful, right?
Yeah.
So he's built that myelin layer over thousands of reps in stressful conditions. He's got this thick cord of a myelin layer that he can make quick decisions. And now you're just asking him to do an easy one? No
Yeah.
problem. Right. So building these myelin layers, so when you build a skill, it's like building a new neural pathway. And so I take that into consideration. I'll give you an example. So when I teach an armbar, we drill an armbar a few times, and then I'll time you. How many arm bars can you do in 30 seconds? Boom, go.
Okay.
So now you start
Now
making
there's a stress of
mistakes. Oh
numbers.
crap.
Yeah.
Right, right. Because even though that's like a arbitrary thing, it increases the stress, right?
Yeah.
So I'm immediately trying to build your myelin layers. You don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying to build your myelin layer so that you can perform this under more duress next time. So I'm trying to give you as many opportunities to learn this skill and make it become reflexive as quickly as possible. So that made a huge difference. Like when I plan my curriculum and I plan my lessons, I always try and think of like, how can I make this? So first you teach the skill, but then you have to try and increase the stress just a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So that they can build these myelin layers. Another example of this type of learning is from the women's volleyball team, the women's national volleyball team. They have this system called Practice Ugly. Have you heard about this? You're in
Uh-uh.
college sports, right?
Yeah.
So this is a college sport thing. Well, it's I don't know how new it is. It's probably at least 10 or 15 years old now, but they set up practices where you're not just simply drilling, but they try and make the drill or the whatever it is, that skill that you're practicing, hard enough that you can't successfully complete it. So anyway, they have this practice system where they try and make the skill hard enough that you can't complete it every time successfully, right? So
Yeah.
it adds variation into the skill, which adds stressors, but it also makes you develop these different, in my mind, what it's doing is helping you develop different branches of your myelin pathways so that you can adjust them but still perform the task at hand. And you can do it reflexively, meaning that it doesn't take a lot of brain power to do it, right? So the first time you're on the mats, it's all this brain power. White belts are spazzy because they're scared of everything and they don't know what to do. Blue belts are seeing things that, like, you can do this as a white belt too, but as you develop a skill, you might see the opportunity to do an arm bar, but you're like, oh, by the time you see it, you're interpreting it. And by the time you move toward it, it's gone. The opportunity's gone,
Yeah.
right? So you're still building that myelin layer. So once it becomes smoother, you start catching arm bars because now you're moving much more reflexively. You become more fluent with that skill, right? And then as you become even better and better, you're talking about upper belts. What happens is, in my mind, it's almost like computer programming. You have chunks where you're like, all right, if I see that, I run this routine. This
Yeah.
is the armbar routine. I'll just do it. I do it automatically. I don't even think about it. I just go into it, right?
Yep. If then statements.
Or right, exactly. You develop these OODA loops, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a big part of my game. Like I think that's one of the things that I do best is my OODA loop. It's not so much a technique or one technique or a single technique. It's that I can make decisions faster than you. And because I know I can anticipate what's happening, not only can I make decisions, but I can set it up to be like, all right, I'm going to do this and then see what he does. And if he does that, I do this. If he does that, I do this. And then I create a reaction and I take advantage of whatever it is that you decide to do. I take advantage of it.
Yeah.
So but it all starts with developing those fluent skills and then testing them and drilling them until you understand them, and then increasing the stress level, whether it's by time or by, we play a lot of constraint based games
Mm-hmm.
at Bandit. So I look, I after 40, I hurt my back a bunch and I figured out like if I don't warm up, I'm gonna hurt my back. So I'd always come in 10, 15 minutes early and jog around, do some back exercises and warm up a little bit. I highly encourage you if you are over 35, 40, get in 5 to 10 minutes early, warm yourself up because we're not doing that here. If you want to compete, also highly encouraged. Do something supplemental to this. I am there to learn jujitsu. I want to play jujitsu. I don't want to I don't mind sweating, but I don't want to sweat because I'm jogging.
Right.
I don't want to sweat because I'm doing exercise. I'm doing sit-ups. You know, I want to sweat because I'm trying to beat you at something and I'm putting effort into it. So I hate warm-ups. So anyway, so you come in, we do our lesson for about 20, 30 minutes, and then we play games. We play Rob Bernacki has been a huge influence on uh the words that I use, my semantics, but also his hi- uh, he has this whole system called "fuck your jujitsu." I hate even saying it. I don't like to say that, but screw your jujitsu,
Yeah.
okay? And he essentially plays these small games that are constraint based that force you to learn certain skills. What I love about it is that they're not technique based skills. They're just learning about grappling. One of them is we play sweepers where the guy on the bottom gets whatever he wants. He starts in a supine guard. The guy on the top gets to walk into his guard and give the guy on the bottom whatever he wants. If he wants a sleeve grip, you give him a sleeve grip. If he wants a lapel, you give him a lapel. And then you try not to get swept. You don't get grips, but you can move. You do whatever you
Yeah.
want, but you have to give him the grips that he wants. It's a great game. It can be exhausting, but it's a great way for both people to learn a skill. Another one is called pass hole. We've been playing pass hole a lot this week. Pass hole means the guy in the top gets whatever he wants. He gets to do whatever you start a supine guard, and he gets to do what he wants. The guy on the bottom doesn't get any grips. If I see you taking grips, you get to hold stress balls. You know how I hold balls sometimes
Yeah.
we roll on Saturday, right?
Yeah.
I'll hold tennis balls, but I found these football stress balls that are squishy.
Yeah.
They're easier if you roll on it or something, so I use those instead. But anyways, something to keep your hands from gripping.
You've beaten
Um,
me with balls in your hands before. So
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's
well,
a real
you're not.
thing.
Don't feel like you're alone.
Yeah.
It's I do that a lot. It's actually surprising that once you get used to it, it almost doesn't make a difference, to be honest. But it's a good way to, you know, not burn your grips out. But anyway, we play games like that, and each of those games has some specific goals. To learn more holistically. I don't like. I teach some techniques. Okay, most of the techniques I teach are pretty fundamental, basic techniques.
Hmm.
Most of the things that I teach that aren't necessarily technique based, I say that you can probably bring everything down to a technique, but there's a lot of grappling that's feel. There's a lot of grappling that's like, well, this guy's really long and he probably plays a really good close guard. This guy's really short. He probably has a nasty kimura. Those are things guys have to figure out.
Yeah.
Not only I don't I try not to put you in a box. I try not to get people put in a box, but you know as well as I do that some techniques work better for some people and some games work better for some body types. Whatever. I don't care. I want you to learn all the fundamentals whether you'd be good at them or not. Everybody needs to learn a triangle. I don't care how short your legs are. You got to understand how it works, right? But like once you learn that, like you also need to learn how to perform those things. And when I was a white belt, blue belt, whatever, when I was getting on the mats and didn't really understand anything, everything was so overwhelming. Even when I had those basic Gracie combatives, right?
Yeah.
Everything still felt really overwhelming. And so what I try to do is I try to take that and constrain it. All right. Don't worry about everything. Worry about side control. You're going to be in top side control for 3 minutes, and you're going to be in bottom side control for 3 minutes. What should you be doing from the top? Three things, two to three things. That's it. What should you be doing from the bottom? Two to three things. That's it. And you know when you become comfortable with that over a month of doing it, because we try and do a position each month, um, you get comfortable in that position. By the end of the month, I can give you some really good details to make you better because you've seen this 50 times. You've probably started to see certain patterns, right? It usually takes years to see those patterns.
Yeah.
Well, if you see it in a month, because you've done it over and over and over and over again, and it's a game, so I don't get bored, right? It's like rolling, but it's a small piece of the rolling, right? So I just feel like that has been a great thing for me to, get my guys up to speed quickly. And when I say up to speed, I want everybody to get to the place where they're comfortable rolling because that's when it gets fun. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You come in, it can be really rough for months. And when you play these games, you're essentially by that middle of the month, if you've been consistent, you're doing a small part of rolling. And it feels like you're starting to roll.
Yeah.
But it's just in this subset of the game. And that's okay because each subset builds depth. But
I mean,
after you've
that's
been through it all, you've got this breadth of knowledge, right?
yeah. I think that, there's definitely something to everything that you're saying. I mean, honestly, when we were talking about coming on and I saw that you had kind of come through like the Gracie combatives piece, and I was thinking, that's very I method. Um, and then tomorrow I've got Matt Thornton, and he's very much constraints. Everything about him is aliveness and resistance. Um, going against resistance all the time. Uh, but as you've taken me through this, you're connecting the same. And I had Michael Ocampo on. He's a Henzo Gracie guy down in the Houston area, and he gamifies everything with his new people. He teaches them all the rules about, and he teaches self defense, but he teaches them the rules of sport jujitsu on day one. He wants them to know it's 2 points if you get past their hips and pass guard. He wants them to know it's 4 points if you achieve mount. So that gamifying it immediately, people at least have an idea of, hey, I know where I want to go. Whether I know how to get there yet, and we'll handle that later. But um, so it's this is a fun thing about doing this podcast is I learn from every single one of you, and I can see the intersections on all the thought process.
And
So
it's exciting. It's exciting to be able to have guys that, like when I first started, I had all these guys that had never done jujitsu before, which is great.
yeah,
But it was like, man, I really want to get these guys to where at least they can roll and feel
yeah,
comfortable, right? And so by gamifying, that's a term that I probably don't use enough, but that's exactly what I'm trying to do, right? Gamify these subsections, these constraint-based training. Then you give them this thing that's something they can process, right? It's the processing power. When you start to roll and the world is your oyster, there's just too much to process. But when you come down to a specific position, all right, this is what you're trying to do. That's it. And then maybe so I do a hybrid, right? I just met with this guy that he teaches completely ecological. And what that means is like he doesn't teach techniques at all. He gives you these small games to play, and you just play the game, and then he gives you a different game, and you play that game, and you play this game, and he teaches. I think there's pros and cons to it. I think one of the big pros is you figure stuff out on your own, right? And that's
yeah,
kind of the gamification kind of teaches you that too. The constraint space. There's a lot of overlap, right, in all these different techniques.
absolutely.
Um, the thing that I think you have to be careful of in the ecological system is how do I holistically teach the whole thing over time, obviously not all together, but like how do you teach the whole thing and make sure you cover all the important pieces in the
Yeah,
ecological system? That to me is overwhelming. So it makes me a little uncomfortable. That being said, with constraints based, if I start with the main seven main positions, I feel like, okay, if I start here, and this is probably my engineer brain, like breaking things down. All right, you got to do this first and then break it down. But that's how you do it, right? These are the main positions. Let's
hmm,
gamify each position. Talk about the fundamentals of the top, which is control, the fundamentals of the bottom, which is Rob Bernacki would talk a lot about your frames, your levers, your wedges, your spinal alignment, and your base. Those are main principles of jujitsu that I feel can describe most of the things that we do in jujitsu. Those things kind of cover them. Um, but anyway, so as you do that, like it all kind of comes together, it all kind of comes together where I'm just trying to break it down small enough that people can absorb it quickly. And by doing it by position, I want to teach in context. And the reason I want to teach in context, I think this is in the talent code. There was this study done where they took a bunch of uh, chess masters and they took a bunch of regular people. Now I'm probably going to say this wrong because I haven't read it in a while, but this is the gist. They showed a bunch of chess boards with random pieces on it to both of these groups, and they all got about the same amount of recall. I don't remember what it was, but it was some amount of recall that was fairly low, 30, 20%, whatever.
Yeah.
Then they showed games like historical games, and they would stop it in the middle of the game and they would show the random people and they would show the chess masters. And the chess masters had a significantly higher recall on those because they made sense, because they were
Right.
in context. Like, oh, that knight would move there, that rook would move there. This is threatening that. And they remembered it all because it was in context. The random people about the same amount of recall, right? So when I teach, I want to teach in context because number one, it helps you absorb things, and number two, it helps you with your recall. Then you absorb those things you're teaching in the same position for a month, and you play those games too. Now, by the end of the month, they're asking you questions about this elbow escape from the bottom of side control, and you're like, "Yes, this guy. This is his second month in jujitsu, and he's already asking these kinds of
Right.
questions. This is a win, right?" So,
Yeah.
anyway, I've seen really good success with that, and that's kind of my mentality when I'm trying to teach.
I love it. Um, yeah, I remember one of the first times you brought some of your guys up from Bandit to an open mat, and I think I was rolling with a guy. I don't remember his name, but he said he was at Bandit. And I said, "Do you have any idea how lucky you are to be learning from Kingsley? Especially at a gym, that's new. So there aren't 40 people in a class. It's you know, if it's just starting, I don't know what your average class size is, but you know, I love small classes. If there's 8 people in a class or less, it's like a semi-private.
Yeah.
Uh, it's a good way to learn.
Yeah,
Um,
that's definitely one of the benefits of a new school, and Sean's talked to me about that before because I was like, "Man, Sean, my guys, they feel like they're learning so fast." He goes, "Yeah, because you only have, a few of them that you get to spend all this time with." I was like, "You're right. You're absolutely right."
yeah,
But, yeah, it is a very, I think, underrated part of a new school is you get a lot of time with the instructor.
yeah. So you do a month at a time in a position. How far out are you kind of planning, month to month, and then maybe the connections between the two positions? Because, as we mentioned in the ecological, you're kind of teaching these chunks, and I wonder about the transitions between. I haven't really done much under anyone that's done ecological other than a drop in at SBG in Idaho. Paul Sharp teaches ecological, and it was 2 classes that I dropped in, and it was awesome. I had a blast, but I wonder what that looks like in the long term.
Um, I probably would say I wouldn't consider a lot of what I do as specific as the guy that I worked with that's ecological. I would really classify it more as like a constraints based just because man, he does such a good job of like narrowing in on a very specific skill. But when I trained with him, one of the games that we played was all right, you guys are both standing. You get 2 hands on your opponent, they get 2 hands on you. Like one of you guys is gonna win with 2 hands on the other, right? And I was like,
Yeah,
oh, that's kind of a cool game, right? So we did that, and that was just a small snippet of grip fighting. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Versus like, all right, we're gonna do a takedown or something, right? So, um, I typically don't break things down that far. But I'm sorry, what was your question again, Matt? You were
Well, I'm
asking?
just I'm just curious about the connections if you were to be teaching a position at a time. How are you like?
Oh,
So let's say you're inside mount, and
how do
then
I
next
break it
month you're going
down?
to go to mount.
Yeah. So that's a great question. So what I try to do typically is I usually teach offensive moves first, like top stuff. And one of the reasons I do that is because I found that pain is a great catalyst for learning, right? Uncomfortable, being uncomfortable. If I'm hurting because you're smashing me, I'm motivated to figure out how not to let that happen, right?
Yeah.
So I typically will teach more like offensive type things to start, and then I teach defensive things, right? And then I'll teach defensive things. And I really don't spend as much time on submissions as I probably should. I do a lot more um, transitions, controls, and we teach stuff like that, right? So I do teach transitions to and from the position that we're in that month. Um, like for example, we'll do mount one month and then back the next month, right? So toward the end of the month, I'll do a lot of mount to back transitions. Or I'll do mount to, you escape instead of escaping to full guard, I'll show escaping to half guard and then go into like a like a like an arm drag type thing from there, right? So I'll show that to the back. And then the next month when we do the back month, I revisit those about halfway through the month and say, all right, you guys remember from this half guard we did to the back, so we're going to do that. We're going to do the arm drag to the back from butterfly guard. We're going to do um, twisting arm control, seated back takes from the mount. So there will be a connection to the position that we're doing. And then a lot of times if I do that, like let's say I do arm drag, I'll do all right. So when after the lesson or after the drilling part of the class, I'll have them all right. Start with an arm drag rep, and then when you take the back, you're live now. And whenever they escape, you switch. Or we do that every time they escape, you reset and redo it for 3 minutes, and then it's top bottom. I do like to do timed ones because like if you're going with somebody that's real stuck or really good at controlling, you might end up doing like one rep in your time. You don't want to do that, so I do like to time them so everybody gets the same amount of time to work their position or whatever. But anyway, I do live transitions, and what I found was with this first cohort, by about month 4 they were starting to transition while they were playing the games, and it
Hmm.
surprised me. Like, I was like, "Oh, he got to the next position, like, that was
Yeah.
great," you know? So, yeah, it was surprisingly natural for them to start doing that sort of thing, and I wasn't counting on that, I wasn't expecting that, but that's kinda what happened.
It's awesome. Um, what do you do? How are you building culture within your gym?
That's a great question. I really try to emphasize that we have to take care of our training partners. I've never been a big competitor. Um, I just it just I love jujitsu because I love jujitsu. I love to play the game. I really never cared about um I competed in like the Arnolds back long ago. Like at one point and I
Yeah.
I think I won like a second place medal in no-gi and I'm sure that I got choked out several times in gi because I was doing mostly no-gi when I started. Um And then I enjoyed competing at the Chitwood thing, last year, that was kinda fun, but I really don't care as much about competition. I love to train, I love to train with my friends. To me, there's I mean, hitting a berimbolo on a buddy, it makes me laugh so hard, I would so much rather do that than get a submission.
Yeah.
I mean, like 10 times over. Okay, so I'm gonna tell this story, and I hope it doesn't come off the wrong way because this is, like, my proudest moment in jujitsu, okay? So, I was a brown belt, like, I think I was 2 stripes, and, I was like, I was telling my wife, like, "Listen, I'm training at Chitwood all the time, but I'm really only training in the mornings and on Saturday, I never see Sean." Like, I didn't train with Sean a lot. I have a lot of respect for him, I feel like I know him pretty well, but I didn't spend a lot of time training with him. I would have loved to spend more time with him. But he teaches on Tuesday nights, so I was like, "Yeah, I gotta go start training on Tuesday nights. I gotta get to know Sean better," you know? So I was training on Tuesday night. One Tuesday night, I come in and, Sean gives me, "Hey, let's go." So I was like, "Cool." So we start going. Sean jumped to an Ashi, an outside, or an Ashi Garami, like a single leg X. And as soon as he started doing it, I was able to push his knee down and jump over the edge to start a berimbolo and hit the berimbolo on him. And that's the proudest moment in my jujitsu journey was hitting a berimbolo as a counter to Sean's Ashigarami entry, because I did it fast enough that I don't think he realized what I was doing until I came up on his back. And he was like, "Whoa!" I was like,
Yeah.
"Yeah, dude."
I
So
mean,
like, it wasn't a submission. But again, like to me, that's more fun than a submission.
yeah.
It's one of those things where you can kind of rib them like, I got you on that one, and nobody got hurt. Nobody was embarrassed. It was a fun move that I got to pull off on a guy that I really have a ton of respect for
Well,
and will
that's
know
a
more
that's a
jujitsu than I will
primary
ever know.
that's a primary part of his game. Um, is
Yeah.
that single leg? I mean, he came
Yeah.
up through his first. I think he went all the way to brown belt under Ribeiro. So like that's the Ashi and the De Leva. That's yeah. So I'd be pretty stoked about it too, because he's good at it. Yeah. Especially
Yeah.
Berimbolo. Yeah, I giggle.
It was fun. It's fun.
I got Berimboloed a couple months ago by a guy that you know once he was in it, I could feel it happening, and I just started giggling. I was like, yeah, here I go. you know,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like, yep, here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So so let me go back for a second. So one of the reasons, so I learned to berimbolo back in 2013, right? Back when it was like everybody was doing it on the competition scene, right? The
yeah,
Meow brothers were doing it. The Mendez brothers were just crushing the berimbolo, and I couldn't even figure it out. It literally took me like 2 months to even figure out how to do a berimbolo. I had watched them slowed down the frames, trying to figure out what was going on,
yeah,
and, like, I finally saw a video by Stephen Kesting, thank goodness he was doing stuff back then, and he really dumbed it down for me, simplified it to where I could actually perform the movement, right? And now I'm performing this movement on who?
uh,
Caroline King, 5'2",
okay.
120, right? Tiny,
I was
and
about
I'm,
to
like,
guess
trying to
Fred.
get under her. Right,
Yeah,
right, but yeah, she's awesome, but anyway, like, after I figured it out, we spent the next 6 months trying to berimbolo each other during our roles, which was super fun because anytime you hit it, it was like, we just
yeah,
start laughing because it was the best, it's just for me, that's the pinnacle, it's just awesome, but, that really sharpened my game to try and hit those, and I love rolling back takes, they're just fun to do, but anyway, so that's one of the reasons it was kind of my highlight too. Like one of my favorite jujitsu memories was that moment. And I think that was the class that he gave me my third stripe. And he was like, "Oh, that was a good job." So I was like,
yeah,
"Yeah, dude,
yeah.
it was as good as I thought." So it was good. It was good.
That's awesome. So as far as the culture within your gym, how many people do you have that you would say is your regulars?
That's a good question, man. Probably 10 to 12 that are pretty consistent. Um, I've got a couple of purple belts right now. One is probably getting pretty close to brown belt, and the other one is not too far behind them. They're both very good. They've been purple belts a long time. And then I've got probably 6 or 7 blue belts that I've promoted, um, that are my guys from the beginning. And then and several. I've got 2 blue belts that joined us recently, and probably 3 or 4 white belts. That's kind of our mix. But I try to be really. I always try to emphasize like, hey, we got to take care of each other. Um, Anytime we do a submission, especially leg stuff, right? Like I try to emphasize like, hey, this is how we complete our heel hooks. We do them. We do them in the gi. We do them in no gi. I don't care, but this is how we do them. And
Yeah,
the Danaher DVD was really instrumental to me because he was like, bend the toes toward the butt. So we're not turning the foot on the bottom so that it rips the knee before you feel it. It feels almost like a toe hold when you do it toes toward the butt. It gets the same motion, but
yeah,
it a little bit different on the foot, right? And so that's how we practice things. And typically we don't finish them anyway. We make it tight. We hold for 3 seconds. You can make eye contact. You guys both know what's going on.
yeah,
And then you get a tap, like,
yeah,
so we play that way. We try and take care of each other. And, I think for the most part, we've been pretty successful, doing it that way. Um, but that's super important to me. I mean, longevity is critical. Like if
Yeah.
you're going to be good, consistency is critical, and consistency means that you've got to try and avoid injuries as much as possible. Especially I'm getting older. Um, I feel bad. I've done a pretty good job of not injuring people. I did injure somebody on our last pressure test, and I still feel bad
Yeah.
because
Padraki.
I popped somebody's ribs, and I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, yeah." I feel terrible. It was totally an accident. It was me trying to get a sweep and him trying to stop a sweep, and it was just the wrong
Yeah.
thing at the wrong place, and pop goes the
I
weasel.
think, you know,
But overall,
go ahead. I think
I
over
was gonna say overall, I truly try really hard to keep things playful for the most
Mhm.
part, and we like to play jujitsu and take care of our partners.
I think that, accidents are gonna happen. I mean, you know this, and I guess I'm speaking to, I've got some white belts that listen to this podcast. Accidents are gonna happen. Um, you know, Padraki is absolutely, I mean, Padraki's tough as nails. He's super good. Um, so, obviously we're not learning to bake cupcakes, and it's a physical sport. And um, so, but I did hear about it. Like, yeah, Padraki got hurt. Kingsley got him. Like, but
Felt so bad. I
you
still
know,
feel bad. I that was oh,
it happens. And he's been battling other injuries. And not to, I haven't talked to Padraki about um all this, but he had the wrist issue. He's banged up like every brown belt. So I mean, I've been tomorrow I'm finally getting back on the mats. I took a week off because I'm dealing with a neck injury, and it's been a tough couple of weeks of like, when I go, and if I'm injured, I said, I'm gonna go, but I'm not gonna roll. I'm gonna take it easy. Uh, but then I end up doing it anyway. I can't help myself. So I literally, I was like, thank God it's Thanksgiving week. I can just take the week, and I won't be tempted to go and prolong this thing. But I'm going tomorrow, and we'll see how it goes through the early part of class, and I'll decide if I'm actually going to roll again yet. Um, but yeah, injuries are going to happen. I mean, it's it's part of it. Um, Chris Howater says it's not who's best, it's who's left. Uh,
yeah,
you know.
that's true.
Um, yeah. So, what do you want, Bandit? What do you envision for Bandit 10 years from now?
I mean, hopefully, we'll be I always wanna tweak my teaching methods if I find something that works better. One of the things that I want to incorporate that I've not been very good at doing is recalling a random, technique or skill from last month to drill this month occasionally. So I'd like to do more of that. I need to, plan better to do that, but it's in my things to do list. Another thing is my stand-up is not phenomenal. Like in all, I'm a classic adult onset jujitsu learner. I don't like to hit the ground hard. I don't like to throw people hard because I mean, your probability of getting injured stand up is much higher than on the ground. But I am a big believer in having a handful of techniques that you are very fluent with standing, so that if you have to stand, you can stand. I'm a big believer in, again, covering all your bases. Have your fundamentals down strong, because that's, again, breadth of knowledge.
Yeah,
And once you do that, build depth in those things until you're fluent. And I plan to try and do that more with standing. This year we did a full month of standing in January,
that's good.
and we should probably do it twice a year, like all the other
Yeah,
like all the others. But we had a guy that was a national level wrestler, and he came in and showed us a couple of things, and I learned a lot from what he was showing us, and we all stayed pretty healthy that month, which I was that's the most important thing to me, the stand up month. But yeah, so I'll probably try and do more stand up stuff. But in 10 years, what do I envision? hopefully I'll be able to have some of my more experienced guys do more teaching. So right now I try to do purple belt Thursdays. We call it belt Thursdays, right? Hey,
Yeah.
what are you guys teaching today? Like, let's see what
Okay.
you got, and then I'll talk to those guys about something that lines up with the month or something they're working on. Hey,
Mhm.
why don't you teach that? The guys that are purple belts, they came from other schools, so they have different styles. And one of my purple belts is I have two, Aaron and Chris. Chris is the one that Sean just striped up last week. He came up to Lewis Center for the class, and Sean striped him up and said, "This guy is getting close." And I'm like, "You're right." Aaron is the other guy, is the other purple belt, is not far behind him, in my opinion. Came from a different background, totally different style. His
Yeah.
defense is just nasty. One of the hardest guys to choke I've ever dealt with ever. Um, just just very aware and very good at defending, right? But he has a very different style. So I always ask him, "What do you want to teach on Thursday?" Because he teaches things that I don't even think about, and they're very strong core, you know, skills. And so I really appreciate having those guys. And in 10 years, I hope that they're teaching more, building their experience, building their knowledge base. And yeah, I mean, you see these schools, right? And typically a school starts out, you got a black belt, you got a bunch of white belts, a couple of blue belts, and then the numbers get lower as you go up. But now, like, if you're there long enough, you have more black belts than almost anything else, and that's what I wanna grow these guys until they're as good or better than I am, and both skill and ability to share their knowledge. And obviously, everybody has different goals as well, like, some people just wanna show up, and if you just wanna show up and need a family, that's what we're here for. Um, I think jujitsu is just like the thing that we do while we get to know each other and get to support each other and build that camaraderie. I heard you talking about this before. Like, you don't get to do that for many things in this life unless you're in the military, right? In the military, it sucks so bad. The camaraderie is super strong.
Yeah.
Well, in jujitsu, I hope it doesn't suck quite as bad, but you're going through a challenging thing together, right? That challenging thing builds camaraderie. That pain that is a catalyst for learning is also a catalyst for growing together and leaning on each other and taking care of each other. And um, I want to build a community. I want to build a community that's open, and I want to support the guys and whatever it is that they want to do. Um, One of the things I struggle with in jujitsu in general is a cultish communities. There's cultish communities out there, and there's black belts that they lord it over people, and it almost makes me uncomfortable. Like, I don't mind people calling me coach, but like professor, master, sensei,
Mhm.
all those things to me are very not only superfluous but like extremely unnecessary and build an image that I don't want. I feel like we're all growing in this together. I'm still learning stuff. I mean, I've got a ton of stuff that I need to continue learning,
Yeah.
right? And you'll hear all the black belts say that, "Oh, it's the beginning of the journey," but it really you get to black belt and you look out and you realize you see your breadth and you see that your depth isn't in everything. You have depth in certain things. There's so like, everything can have depth.
Yeah.
It's like an ocean of things to learn. Um So anyway, in 10 years, I've built depth in a couple more areas, and I have people that have done the same in different areas. One of the things that is really important to me is our Wednesday class. Wednesday class is what we call our reverse classroom model. On Wednesdays, you bring something in that you want to learn, and I help you learn it. You teach your partner, he teaches you. You switch partners. You teach your partner, he teaches you. You switch partners. The whole time, ideally I get to float.
Okay.
It's not always even numbers, but
Where
ideally, I get to float and help each person with whatever it is they're working on, um, learn it better. One
Yeah.
guy came in with octopus guard. I don't know octopus guard. So I said, "Show me how it feels." So he did it to me, and I basically initially I was like, "Well, that's not gonna work because of this or whatever." And he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh yeah, I gotta put my arm heavier on your head." And yeah, yeah, yeah. There you go. That feels better, And now what? Like I said, now if I what if I go here? Oh, we play with it. Now
Yeah.
this is how I came up learning. I didn't
Yeah.
have a
You
black belt.
workshop. Yeah.
Yeah, you go watch a berimbolo and then you go try it 15 times to see what works.
Yeah.
So it's something I became pretty good at figuring things out. And then people learn different skills, and then when they come in and we get to train together, everybody gets to, "Hey, that guy does this guard that's really weird. Try it out," and
Yeah.
and then they get to feel it and see if maybe it's for them, and maybe they just got to figure out how to defend it. Either way, they're learning some breadth. If they like it, they can go dig deeper and learn some depth. And so, it's the way that I encourage that depth of learning is our Wednesday classes. Whatever you want, what's good for you. I encourage people, like, figure it, if you don't know what to focus on, and everyone should have a focus. If you go talk to a bandit guy and say, "Hey, what are you working on right now?" Every one of them should have an answer. And it's because of those Wednesday classes, right? And that's how I build depth that I don't even have for my players, by them working on those specific things.
I like it. Where are you? So you've mentioned you've got a lot of different games. Where have you pulled those games from? Has it just been just the time and experience where you've seen it, or do you have a specific source?
When you say, "Oh, do you mean like the games that we
Like
play?"
we were talking about some of the games that you play earlier, but then you have some very
Yeah.
specific class conceptual things.
So with the reverse classroom model, I heard about this on a podcast, and I thought it was fantastic. Some people run their whole academy with the reverse classroom, and that's much more complex. Um, I didn't want to do that. Again, I think the hybrid model is really good for me because I like teaching the fundamentals, and then, like, I feel like breadth is important, but then the depth is on the student. Um, but the other games, a lot of them came from Rob Bernanke and Screw Your Jiu-Jitsu type exercises. Some of them you just make up though. He plays leg spaghetti, but we like to play like spider web starts. Start with the arm in a spider web and go from there. Ready, go. And then switch at a certain point. We play from the back. Um, eh, you play from each position. You play from each position, just like you do randori stand up in judo, right? You play from each position, and so a lot of the games are like that. There are some that are more specific, like you narrow the scope, but typically those are. I mean, we just play a lot of positions in some of the screw your jujitsu type games.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do some more reading up on him. Maybe I'll get him on the show.
Yeah,
Very
he will
cool.
do it. Oh, that would be awesome. He does not know me, but I'm a big fan. He Rob Bernanke has a school out in Vancouver, and he
Okay.
has an open invite to, like, "Hey, if you wanna come out here, you can come out here for a week, you can stay at my house, and it's free." And I really wanna do it.
Yeah.
I really wanna do it.
Okay.
I haven't been able to pull the trigger, but I wanna do it, and, I have, life. I'm just grateful that I have a place where I can train right now versus,
Yeah.
and I can afford my mortgage payment, like, that's just seems like it's getting harder rather than easier. But anyway, yeah, but that is one of my favorite things about him. Look, I don't love everything about Rob, but I love the way he teaches jujitsu, and he's a very smart guy. Um, I'd say, and he would agree with this. He's a little immature, probably, like, but I have grown to love the way that he shares things, and I really appreciate a lot of his insights. Have helped me a great deal in my own development. So
Very cool. Well, Jeff, thank you for coming on. I mean,
yeah,
uh,
man,
like I
it's been a
said,
blast.
I've been lucky that I have not had a shortage of people willing to come on here, and I appreciate that you were willing to give up some time and sit down with me. And I look forward to it. I'm still gonna hit Chitwood open mats. I still do that. I try to get there once a month if I can, just to roll with the old gang. And so hopefully I can run into you sometime when we're both up there. And and I hope your gym keeps growing. And
Yeah, thanks,
you
man.
know,
Yeah, me too.
nothing but the best.
You know, I've got some plans. And if they go through, we'll have to circle back. But I've got some plans to grow the gym, and I'm hoping that that'll happen in the next 2 months type time frame. And if it happens, it'll be a really exciting change for Bandit and this other opportunity. But um, yeah, sorry, that's kind of a teaser, I guess, because
Yeah.
I can't give too much away. But I do
Okay.
have plans, and hopefully those plans will include a big expansion of the gym, which will be really exciting. So
That's
we'll see how
outstanding.
that goes.
Now, if anybody wants to follow you, what are the best places to, where's your gym, the address, any social media?
Oh, that's a good question. Uh, I know what the address is, but I can't. It's on Dayton Street in Springfield. If you Google Bandit BJJ,
Yeah.
it'll come right up, no
Okay.
problem. It's really easy to find the place. Um, I am not very good at social media. I'm probably too old. I just yeah, I'm not a big one, especially on Facebook. I have divested that to some of my students that are better at it. Like, hey, you guys mind posting some stuff on here? But we do
Okay.
have a Bandit team page, and that is a good way to see some of our stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, anything that Chitwood does that's big will probably be there as well. And yeah, but I also I teach a couple of privates every week, and I'm open to doing that if people are interested. I'd love to do it, and yeah, I'm pretty easy to get a hold of.
Okay. Well, I'll be posting whatever links in the show description that you can find on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. And I hope you guys keep tuning in for Still Rolling coming up in the next couple of weeks. And we'll talk soon. Thank you again for joining.
Thanks, Matt.